We are live. Happy Tuesday, Ron. How are you?
Good. Happy Tuesday. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Merry Christmas. Last week, we went live on Tuesday because Thursday was Christmas, and we're kind of doing the same again this week, going live Tuesday instead of Thursday, since Thursday is New Year's. So, yeah. How was your Christmas, Ron?
It was fantastic. It was really one of the nicer Christmases. We have a whole bunch of family here, and it's just been fantastic. And the weather's been unbelievable. It's been mid 80s. It's been awesome.
Yeah, how's about that? It was 72 degrees for us here in Charlotte on Christmas Day, and my daughter and niece and future sister-in-law were sunbathing in the backyard
Wow, that's great. That's probably rare.
on Christmas Day. Indeed, it is. Well, we're almost done with 2025, and I think we're going to keep this one a little bit shorter than we usually go. We usually go about an hour. This one might only last about 40 minutes. We've got a few topics, and if you're watching now or if you're watching later, Happy New Year to all. Thanks for your time and interest in two old white guys talking about housing and AI and marketing and branding. But let's get to this week's topics. We're going to start off with a from the gut, a segment of the show where I just talk about some things that are pop culture, trending, marketing, branding, AI, sometimes life stories for me. But this week I'm talking about Jake Paul, and I've titled it Visibility Over Talent. And then we're going to get into three main topics. So let's bring that first one up, and Ron, take the lead on this.
Yeah, it's both reporting and forecasting season, and so we got some starting out the gate with a couple of really good ones. First, we're going to talk just about some first-time home buyer behavior from a recent report by NAR, and that has some interesting statistics and some great graphs.
Yeah, and I might push you to make some forecasts of your own so we can get you that crystal ball trophy.
Thank you. I'll look for you to ship me one at the end of the year. The 2026 housing market outlook. This is done by Mike Simonson, previously with Altos Research, although he's still a contributor there. And I think hands down he had the very best forecast for housing for 2025. And so we're going to look at some of his forecasts for 2026, and we might look at some of the softer sides of his forecasts, like trends and signals versus hard data. But it was a fantastic report, really good data.
And we've got a bunch of slides on that one.
Yeah, and then this is just fun. This is just throwing this in because it's New Year's. We're going to talk some Costco things, or if you're like David and I, completely mind-blowing, startling.
Ron is the biggest Costco fan that I know. He literally goes on date nights sometimes with his wife to Costco, which is hilarious.
True story. Yeah, go. You can even get a soda with that.
All righty, let's get to From the Gut for this week. All right. So this week I'm talking about Jake Paul and tying it into visibility. I've never been a loan officer. I have been in sales many years ago, owned my own company, and it was primarily a sales company. It was home security systems. But I've been around loan officers and top producing loan officers, and I've spent hundreds, if not thousands of hours, probably thousands of hours around them and talking to them. And when someone asks me, which doesn't happen very often, but if someone asks me what separates top producers from everyone else, especially in a market like this, I've been coming back to one word: visibility. And I know that's not the most glamorous answer. It's not the most technical answer. One thing that hit me lately with Jake Paul making $92 million in a single boxing match, it had nothing to do with the fact that he's a good boxer. He can hold his own, but compared to Anthony Joshua, a poor, lousy boxer, he's not a world champion. He's not even top ranked, but he does understand attention. He built a massive audience. Then he took that audience with him into the ring. And I think there's a huge lesson for anyone in sales, especially in mortgage or real estate. Think about your market. There's probably someone in your town, your city right now who's closing deals left and right. And you know they're not, maybe not the sharpest LO in the shed. They maybe don't give the best advice. They don't have the best process, but somehow they're everywhere. And you might be the one with experience or education, maybe empathy, but if people don't see you, they can't choose you. That's the reality. In today's world, attention trumps talent, at least in the first few steps of the funnel. You can't convert what you never attract. Now, I'm not saying to go post some Jake Paul style content and pick fights with people online, but I am saying this: you need to stop hiding behind your referrals. Stop hoping past clients will magically boomerang back when rates drop. Stop thinking that your service speaks for itself, because the truth is it doesn't if no one's watching. The good news, you don't need a national audience. You don't need to go viral. You don't need to become famous. You just need to be known and trusted inside your own market. That starts with showing up where your people are, whether it be Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Google, AI, whatever fits your style, but pick something and commit. Because the idea that marketing isn't my thing, that's over. This idea that I'm a more relationship based type person, cool, but relationships still require recognition. You can't you can't nurture people who haven't heard of you. Jake Paul didn't win the attention game in the ring. He won it before the fight even started by building an audience that knew him, liked him, or some haters as well, and followed him wherever he went. That's what you need to build as a loan officer, not just an online presence, but a system that gets you in front of the right people and keeps them there long enough for them to remember you when it matters, when they're going to buy a house. So it's not about going viral, or necessarily about going viral. It's not about keeping up with the latest trends. It's more about consistency. And if that feels overwhelming, let me leave you with this. Visibility creates opportunity, but invisibility, it doesn't matter how talented you are. If no one sees it, it just doesn't exist. Run. That's
Yeah,
my from the
that's
gut
great,
this
David.
week.
No, I don't know who this person is. Who is Jake Paul? Like, what does he do?
Really?
Yeah.
He, YouTube influencer, originally. McKenna might be able to help me. I don't know if he was on any Disney shows or something. But his biggest rise to fame, I believe, just YouTube influencer. And
Mhm.
then a couple years ago, stepped into the boxing ring. He's a big dude. He just took on Anthony Joshua. I think he was a two-time world champion, an Olympian, and he's just massive. So he stepped into the ring with him, got knocked out in the sixth round. Everyone knows the fight was rigged. Um, Joshua should have knocked him out in the first round. He went 6 rounds, ended up breaking his jaw. But yeah, he's just a YouTube influencer. McKenna, if you correct me, you can pull yourself on, if not. But yeah, he's got a lot of haters as well, though.
How did he get a check for $92 million? Sorry, McKenna.
No, you're good. That I don't know, but yes, you're correct. He's a YouTube influencer, and it was either him or his brother, Logan Paul, who was on a Disney Channel show. I don't remember which one it was, but both of them kind of garnered their audience through, what's the word? Through doing bad things. What's the word? Not conspiracies. What is the
Like
word?
pranking people.
Yeah, something like that. But anyways, through basically people, him messing up and then doing the typical YouTube apology kind of thing and just garnering a lot of controversy. That's the word I was looking for. Yeah, he
Yeah.
he got a lot of controversy and that's kind of how he got his fame on YouTube.
I
Yeah, there's a
can't
lot
believe
of
he
kids.
paid $92 million, man, to go fight that
Well,
guy.
it was Yeah, it was a Netflix special, and usually, you know, if there's a big fight, whether it be UFC or boxing, it would be, pay-per-view, but this time it was Netflix, and so through sponsorships, that was just the purse of the fight, and they each won, I think, $92 million, and it the lot he he's the same guy that fought Mike Tyson, just
Oh.
about 6 months ago, 9 months ago.
Yeah, you know what, David, going back to your topic, which I loved, you know what, I always challenge under loan officers. Look, are you an undercover loan officer? Because if so, you're in the wrong business. If I went and asked your five closest people, could they tell me what you do? If I asked your neighbors, could they tell me what you did? If I asked your barber, could
Yeah.
they tell me what you did? And so many times the answer is no.
Yeah, I mean, and you've spent more time with loan officers than I have, but just over time, we know that I think a lot of loan officers or real estate agents think that they need to go viral, or they need to have the best content. It's not about that. You know, you need to remind your sphere of influence consistently what you do and why you do it.
There was a report, I wanna say maybe about 7 years ago, and it was a survey of homeowners, and they go, "Would you use your real estate agent again?" And something like 79% or 75% said, "Absolutely." And then they were surveyed, "Did you use your agent again?" And they're like, "No, I don't remember who they were." Like, if I knew how to get a hold of them, I'd use them, but it's been so
Yeah.
long, I totally forgot who they were.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, I would use I think the only reason I haven't repeated the same agent is most of my moves, I've moved from state to state. Otherwise, every real estate agent that I've used in the past, I would more than likely use them again.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's why you gotta stay in front of them because you gotta make it easy for them to get back a hold of you.
Yeah, yeah. All right, let's move on to our first main topic. We are talking about first-time home buyers hit an all-time low. Ron, take it away.
Yeah, and I think we just quickly go through the slides. There's a bunch of them here. They're all really good data points. Once again, this is from the NAR Who's Buying Now report. First thing is it's kind of interesting. Very first slide on the thing too was the average tenure of home ownership now has breached 11 years, and that's a significant change from the early 2000s when that number was much closer to 6 or 7 years. So that's one of the things that's really changing. The report showed. Any thoughts on that,
Why did
David?
it no, just more questions. It looks somewhere around 19 maybe around 2000, the year 2000, it started to tick up. What happened then to make it start rising?
Yeah, I think that what you see there, that tick up, I think, is actually, if this was correct, closer towards a great financial crisis.
Mm,
And that's where all sorts of people lost homes and people just kind of bunkered in. That sort of started the mentality.
right. Gotcha. And then I think obviously the reason we've seen another spike is from COVID, right?
I think too affordability. No, the reason it spiked, David, is because people have 3% interest rates. So they're not
Gotcha.
moving; they're holding on to their interest rate.
Right, which they went down to 3%,
Yeah,
primarily due to COVID,
no,
right?
that you're 100% right, right. But it's the interest rate that's locking them into their
Yeah,
houses now.
right, right. Yeah, no, yeah, let's move on to the next one.
Nothing surprising here. Just repeat buyers, 30% use all cash. A lot of that is from, excuse me, the proceeds from the home they sold. 8%, only 8% of first-time home buyers use all cash. I don't think there's anything surprising there. There, do you, David?
No.
But that giant
Wait,
spike in all cash for repeat buyers is because of the rapid appreciation over the last few years.
right. Wait, are we saying that 8% of first-time homebuyers use all cash?
Yeah, and my guess is that's probably mostly from family.
Inheritance or from family, yeah,
Yeah, family helping them.
gotcha. That's higher than I would have thought, 8%.
Yeah, yeah, me too. McKenna?
McKenna, you gonna use all cash when you buy your first home?
Probably not.
Interesting on the down payment data, repeat buyers average putting 23% down. First time home buyers, as you'd expect, average putting 10% down. But notice how that 10% has it's really significantly increased in the last few years.
Mm, yeah.
And when you
And
go back to the 2000s, what you're seeing there, that's when we had the, piggyback loans, the no income, no assets, where there's a lot of 100% financing. That's why it dipped down. In other periods is when did a lot of FHA type loans and VA loans, and that's what that and the VAs and FHA still do bring that average percentage down.
right. Actually, 10% is higher as well,
Yeah,
higher than what I expected. I would have thought somewhere in the 3 to 5% range,
60%, as you know, David, because of your association with First Home IQ, 60% of first time home buyers think they had to put 20% down.
right? It's crazy.
Yeah, which is unfortunate. One of the myths we have to
Yeah,
conquer.
yeah. Let's move to the next one.
This is interesting. This is probably one of the more interesting slides here, and that is to me is 22. 22% of the down payment comes from gift or loans from family or friends. That number is kind of surprising. The other thing is, to me, David, that was kind of surprising. These numbers really haven't changed much in 25 years, other than the savings number.
Why do you think that is?
Why the savings number is down? I think it's cost of
Uh-huh.
living.
Yeah.
Everything's so expensive, so people don't have as much discretionary, money or able to save.
So top line is savings. The second line down is gift slash loan, family, friends. Third
Mhm.
line down is financial assets. And then the lowest line is inheritance.
Yeah.
These are all surprising.
Yeah, I'm just surprised how flat they are. I don't I can understand financial assets because the stock market's been doing great too, and so, people are probably getting some returns there. But I am a little surprised. That's just that upper line just tells you what the impact that cost of living is having on people right now.
Yeah. That's it. It looks like financial assets is really the only one that's ticking up over
Yeah,
the last few
and I mean
years.
yeah, inheritance is slightly ticking up, but not meaningfully,
Right.
go from the
Yep.
5% line to the 8% line.
Yep. And how many more we got? I think we've got 9 total, so we've probably got 3 or 4 more.
This isn't surprising. First-time home buyers hit an all-time low as a percentage of the overall buyers. They're at 21% right now, the market, where they peaked at around 50%. And I think a pretty healthy place is to be around 45, 50%. So as affordability returns, I think you'll see that number go back up. The other thing, which we're going to talk about in the next slide, I think, so we can go ahead and get to that. I love when that works. So if you look at this is population by age, and here's what's really most important. If you look at the millennial section, that light blue, and you see that peak right there, if you guys, are fans or follow Barry Habib, you've heard him say a million times how we're having this housing formation explosion because typically people start to create, buy houses, that housing formation when they're 33 years old. And so you can just add, 33 years to that population boom, and that's when they're going to start buying houses. And that was now something like 6 years ago or 5 years ago. And that boom never really happened because what we saw is we saw a huge change in demographics where housing formation is now delayed. People are getting married later, they're having kids later or not at all. They're not really getting committed to their job until later. All these things that are life choices that usually lead to owning a home aren't happening, and so it's completely changed what we know of housing formations. And then that's again what's affecting why there's so few first time home buyers. It's not just affordability, it's lifestyle changes.
I'm looking up the age of Gen Z. Gen Z born between 97 and 2012. Um, so that would make them what, 28 at the oldest to 18, 18, 28. I remember when I first entered the mortgage industry, we were all trying to figure out how to market to millennials. This is going back, 14, 15 years ago. How do we market to millennials? And now, how do we market to Gen Z? And even more so, how do you start marketing to Gen Alpha? What age is Gen Alpha? You know?
Yeah, 5. No, you know what You know what I think the answer or the formula is here? You're gonna need a much longer incubation tail. It's just it's gonna take longer to help these people get ready to buy a house. It's not gonna be a 30-day relationship or even a 90-day relationship. It might be a 10-year relationship. Because studies are showing that now it takes almost 10 years when someone first starts considering the concept of buying a home and when they actually execute it. That's a long
Right.
time, and so, the funnel is starting much, much earlier in life, and it's gonna be far harder, and that's gonna be the new skill set for loan officers is how do you not only get in front of Gen Alpha or Gen Z, but how do you incubate them for a decade, and how are you meaningful and add value, and how do you do that at scale, which is a real challenge. I know, Dave, those are things that you and I are trying to help solve.
Yeah, that's gotta be kinda discouraging for a new loan officer knowing that an incubation, period might be 10 years, you know?
It's one of those things you gotta have a bifurcated strategy. How do I find deals today, but how do I build my pipeline so that it endures, and so you really gotta figure that out.
Right, right. We got 3 more slides. Let's move to the next one.
I know, David, you and I thought this probably was the most interesting slide and had a whole bunch of surprising numbers to it, and so if you haven't seen these numbers before, you're probably a little surprised. And the obvious one that this leaps out at you is just the strength of single women homebuyers. How not only are they crushing single men homebuyers, but they're representing now 25% of the market, which is extraordinary. And that's been the biggest change, that we've seen in housing demographics. Of course, married couples are dropping in their percentage of total buyers. The one thing I'll also point out here, David, on this, is 5 years ago there was a lot of predictions and there were wise predictions, but that co-tenancy, tenants in common, buying a house with somebody whom you don't know or don't have a relationship with, but as a business arrangement, that they really thought that was going to proliferate, and it really never happened. Like how can if you talk about house hacking, I can't afford to buy a house, well maybe you and I can buy one together. And that hasn't really materialized for some reason, which is also kind of an interesting thing. This data shows. David, what do you see in this?
Um, I'm I'm curious that the person that you referred to, it's someone that we both respect, that predicted the last category was gonna, dramatically change. I was surprised to hear that. I cannot see why did he think that that was gonna be a leading contender, a category?
Because he thought it's the only way that young people could get into the housing market and that they would be industrious and figure out how. And then they could
Yeah,
build up a little bit of equity that would then lead them to having ownership on their own, you know.
right. I just it doesn't make sense to me. Like me buying a house with my best friend, that's a huge, huge financial commitment. And if you watch Dave Ramsey, he's even more so. He yells at people considering buying a house if you're not married, And obviously love or hate Dave Ramsey. That he's a smart guy. I don't agree with everything he says, but he's a smart guy. And to think that you would go into that such a huge financial commitment with a friend or even worse, just a person off the street or even more so, someone you don't really know, I just can't see how that would make sense.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of trepidation there, but David, I would have a hard stop just having a roommate with somebody. Oh, I'd have a hard time getting past that part. But then again, a lot of this was targeted to young people not that long out of college, where they're used to roommates. They're used to living with people in order to afford an apartment. So
Right.
but it hasn't taken off at all. And there was
Yeah.
lenders that came up with programs for this. Even builders rolled out programs for this. You're like, wow, and it went nowhere.
Yeah. Yeah, the single women, that's impressive. Excuse me, from 11 to 25. Um, that's insane.
And by the way, if you're a loan officer or a real estate agent, do you have a prospecting plan that caters to those single women? Because it's 25% of the marketplace. If not, you're serving, a smaller sliver of a piece of the market.
How would that be different? What would your prospecting plan be different, if you're targeting single women?
Well, I think it would be a much less salesy approach, and a much more human feeling, empathetic approach, education, patience, really, I think that it's true for everybody, but I think women understandably want a lot of confidence in their decisions. And they also want to be respected as being the decision maker, and you got to make sure you're catering to that, and you're really serving them. Where sometimes with men, it's sometimes it's all simple numbers and data, and it's more of a hard sell, even though it shouldn't be. But I think it's slightly different. McKenna, would you agree with that? Being the only woman on the call?
Well, I was just fact checking a second, and women were only allowed to legally independently buy homes in 1974.
That's right.
And I had just put that in the chat for y'all if you wanted to read it, but since you're asking for my opinion, and so for the fact that in what was it, 1985, that was 11% and now it's 25%, I think that that's really impressive.
Yeah, and we don't want to get into and get political, but it's interesting because the Trump administration is rolling back some of those built-in protections for women buying homes. Now, the argument is in today's world, we don't need it, possibly is the argument, and it just adds bureaucracy that's not necessary. But McKenna,
Mhm.
there used to be a whole bunch, like a woman couldn't get a loan without her husband on it. And a woman's income, she couldn't use joint income or family income. It wouldn't be hers, so she couldn't use it to qualify. And she couldn't qualify her own credit. A lot of times women wouldn't even have a credit score because they didn't have any accounts. And I mean, there's been huge progress. And under that breath of freedom, women have just absolutely, like I said, proliferated as buyers, and good for them. And men, pick up your game. You're only 11% of the market.
Yeah, I learned that fact, or we talked about it. I heard it recently, but Ron and you and I chatted about that yesterday. That I didn't know it was 1974 exactly, but I knew it was in that time era. But had you asked me that 6 months ago, when women were given the right to buy a house independently, I would have said 1920. That would have been my
Yeah,
guess.
with
Uh,
suffrage. You,
yeah, just to know that it was only 50 years ago is bizarre.
4 years
yeah.
before you were born.
Yeah, that's nuts.
It
Anyway,
is
I think we
nuts.
got one or two more slides.
Yeah, and these next slides, let's see what we got here. Okay, we hammered that. This is interesting. This slide, and you can go ahead. Whoa, wait. Here's what's so amazing. This slide is, and remember, this comes from NAR. It is the percentage of buyers that use real estate agents, and it's 88%, right? And it's really, if you include the builder, community agents, which are agents, it's really 92% of all buyers use an agent. And let's go ahead and just go to the next slide, and I'll do my second thought on this. And it's no different for selling for sellers, right? A matter of fact, that number is going up. 91% of sellers use an agent, and only 5% try to sell it by themselves. And here's what's really interesting, Dave. And we were talking about this. Agents have just been their image has just been pummeled the last couple of years, and with all these lawsuits that they lost, morale, and not only they come out through this and they're used at a higher rate than before. The other thing that's amazing, David, contrary to what we all thought, their commissions haven't dropped. Their commissions are still near all-time highs, and people are using them, more than ever. It's just amazing how resilient they are.
Have you ever bought or sold yourself?
So
Well,
it's you know,
yeah, I
so
was about to. I just remembered Belinda's role in real estate and your role in real estate, and so it wouldn't surprise me. So you're not kind of the average person.
well, but I'm going to answer. So both Lynn and I are licensed, real estate agents. You used to have to be a licensed real estate agent to be a loan officer in California if you're a broker. And we've had real estate companies almost our entire time we've been married. And you know what, David? We don't represent ourselves. We don't, not at all.
Interesting.
The only time I represented myself is I did a I did a swap with I bought my grandmother's house and sold her mine because it was a small condo, and I bought her house, and I knew the escrow officer really well, and so it was a family transaction, so we
Mhm.
didn't need to have agents. Outside of that, I've always used an agent. Even recently when I moved here, David, I used an agent.
What's the reason?
The thing is, agents are, the most important thing a real estate agent can do is manage their
What?
customer. It's managing your emotions, helping you get through, where you have blind spots, also being a buffer. Like, I don't want to have a buyer call me 50 times a day, but they take
Yeah.
care of all that stuff, and it's great. I keep trying to get our real estate agent on. She's incredible, and if all agents behaved the way she did, like, and not only that, we're super good friends with her. She's been partners with Belinda. We didn't discount her commission. We paid her full price. I was worth every penny, and she
Hmm.
did great.
Yeah. Alrighty. That's the last slide. So you want to talk about housing, the 2026 housing market outlook?
We're gonna go just from one report to another, which is gonna be great. So first, let me just say I'm a complete fan of Mike Simonson. I think he is great. I loved his work at Altos Research. I love hearing him speak. He's so down to earth and easy to understand. And the other thing is, he's been really spot on. I mean, and so last year, which he didn't do in this report, but last year he had this exhaustive 2025 housing outlook, and it was great because in his outlook he put like the top 10 competing, economists and analysts, their outlook, and his was definitely the most believable, which is great. So this year he's come out again, but now he's left Altos, although he's still a contributor, and he's now the head economist at Compass. But he came out, so Compass came out with this market outlook, and David is 64 or 65 pages. It's pretty lengthy. It does have a lot of data points. If you're a data nerd, you can dive into that report. They also have a brief that's a pretty slick PowerPoint thing that's about 6 pages. And the thing I think that we can most concentrate on, David, we'll look at a couple data points, but it's really what he calls four signals to watch in 2026 that will kind of tell us how the year is. And like I said, I've come to trust Mike's forecast. So I think our next slide we start to break those down. So first he said, look, inventory is probably going to continue to increase. It's probably going to increase about 10%. That's going to put some relief on buyers. Not only going to have more options, they might have a little bit better, stronger bargaining position, and that should keep prices fairly flat, which will make homes more affordable. And that's really key. And if you follow Dave or I, on social medias, or you heard talk before, the solution to the affordability problem in housing isn't lower interest rates, and it's not necessarily lower home prices. It's home prices being flat while wages rise, and that has slowly been happening over the last few years. And that's just you're going to see continuing to solve this. But so inventory up 10%. David, I'll go
And
throw
not
it forward,
just
and you
not
give me
just
your thoughts.
yeah, not just
Yeah,
inventory, but the type of inventory, being affordable homes in the 250, $300,000 range instead of the starting in the five to $600,000 range. So inventory, but especially the kind of inventory.
that's great. That's an excellent point. Affordable inventory. Here's the next thing too. This is really interesting because these forecasts on where home prices are going, if you follow it, they've been really jumping around lately because many forecasters believe that home prices would actually maybe drop 1 to 1.5%. But more recently, the way the economy is going and the stock market's going, that they have some more optimism, and most analysts have kind of changed their forecast. And so Mike is going, hey, I think they're going to go up by about 0.5%. We're going to look at a slide later where he gives you the kind of the great, okay, and bad, but about 5% this year. So that should be fine. And then your wages are going to increase 3%, and that starts to create that better gap in affordability. It starts to close the gap. Do you have any thoughts on home prices?
Nope, but I do have a thought on the fact that I'm noticing an M dash in that sentence.
It came from their report. It wasn't us.
I know. Yeah, yeah, I know. Yeah,
By the way,
this is
McKenna,
just
you
a
cropped that
graphic.
perfectly. I don't know how you cropped it around the circles and everything. That's great. Okay, let's go to the next one. His fourth signal is mortgage rates. Now, one thing about both Mike at Altos and also Logan at Housing Wire, they give a lot of cushion in their forecast. As a matter of fact, one year I think they did a 2% mark. Rates are going to be between 5.5 and 7.5. Well, that's not really much of a forecast. But nevertheless,
Yeah.
Mike is going, hey, I think they may bounce between 5.9% and 6.9%, with the average being 6.4%. that is exactly what the NBA is forecasting. It's exactly what it's forecasting. The other thing I'll tell you about mortgage rates, David, and we talked about this. On average, mortgage rates swing 1.4% annually. So within the year, the high to the low on average is 1.4% spread. And so it makes sense that he's having a 1% spread here. But the analysts agree with the 6.4%. So nothing surprising there. Anything for you, David?
What's the average for this year? I know right now it's in the 6.19 or whatever, low 6.2s, but the average for this year, I think, is in the 6.7s, 6.8s.
It's going to bump around 6.3, 6.4 all year. And
The average
most
6.3?
it's going to go up slightly. And it's going to average 6.3, 6.4. Most likely, I mean, anything can happen. But there's so much pent up pressure on prices right now that it's going to be hard to control the rate at the long end.
Gotcha. And I think that was the last of those 4 main slides, right?
I think there's one more. And
Home
then,
sales.
so home sales, this is good news. Now there's gonna hopefully be a 5% increase in the total number of units sold this year, going up to 4.25 million from 4.1 million. And so why this is good news, this isn't gonna solve all our problems. A 5% increase isn't gonna pull you out of the hole, but it's at least putting you in the right direction, which is great. And then remember too, now 4.2 million homes is far less than during the pandemic years. However, we have far fewer loan officers now, so that goes a lot further amongst us. We each get a little bit more than we did before, so it should be a pretty good year. Those are the 4 signals that Mike says we need to pay attention to. Any thoughts on that, David?
No, just a question. I remember the figure of loan officers that dropped out of the industry. What's it at now?
Well, as you know, David, that's nearly impossible to quantify
Right.
because what is a loan officer? And so, like,
Yeah.
as you know, we like to use a loan officer is defined as somebody at least doing one loan a quarter. And if you use
Right.
that number as one loan a quarter, the LO core is down about 40% a head count using that number.
Right. Down below a million now, right? About
Oh yeah,
800,000 or something?
yeah. I'm trying to because it gets confusing between what they call qualified loan officers and there's people that just have a license. I think
Mhm.
qualified loan. I think it's down now around 198,000 of qualified loan officers.
Oh, way lower than I thought.
Yeah, well, there's over 1,000,000 licensed, people, but that doesn't really
Right.
do loans. Like a bank teller's
And
license, but they don't do loans,
but then
or an
you've also
assistant.
got people who hold licenses in multiple states. Is that that's factored in, right, as well?
No, they don't. They take it by main NMLS license,
Okay.
and
Gotcha.
so do you have your one license, and then they don't add the extra states, and I think we peaked at around 356,000 qualified loan officers, something like that.
Gotcha.
I'm trying to get my cobwebs, from holidays. I don't know. I can just be making up numbers now.
All
All right,
right.
let's
Next.
look at charts if I remember right. 2 or 3. Can't have enough charts today. So this is where affordability improves. This is what's really interesting, and this is the affordability is the home price divided by your annual income. And so if it's and so that's what it tells you. What's your income into the price? And so you can see we got into the extremely unaffordable area. That's the top band, but we're projected to get back into the middle band, which is less affordable, but not severely unaffordable. And I don't know if we'll ever get to the affordable band, but we're definitely going in the right direction.
Right. It, where is gosh,
Motion
it's so
detected
small.
at front door.
There you go.
You've got someone at your front door, Ron. Um, yeah, I'm curious, so if we go back to 1995, 1990, it still wouldn't be as high as 2022, would it? 2022 is the highest in a long time, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, going back, it wouldn't be that high.
Yeah. What about back all the way back to the 70s?
I don't think it would be that high. You
No?
did have, massive inflation and 15% or 18% interest rates, but you also had massive wage increases. So it's hard to say.
Yeah. Right, right.
All right, I
Yeah,
think we
no,
got
it's
one.
nice.
Oh, go ahead.
It's I was just gonna say it's nice to see that line coming back down, just for the industry, so
I totally agree. Yeah, all good signs here, right? Mike's giving us positive signals. I think we have just one left, right? Is that right? One or two slides? Let's see.
I think we've got 2 more.
Oh, this is we love this, and everybody watches this mortgage rate lock in. And you're really paying attention to the delta between the outstanding what outstanding rate is and the market rate. So outstanding rate is the total aggregate outstanding loans. What's the average interest rate? And so, the average interest rate's around 4.25 right now, or 4 3/8. I can't quite see it because it's teeny tiny. But the market right now is 6.2. And so that delta is the difference. And when the market rate is above the outstanding rate, then that really slows down, not only affects purchases, but of course crushes refinances. But if the market rate, like we had, in the or mid 2018, 19 into 2022, the market rate is well below the outstanding rate, then it's just boom times. Boom times. And so, David, when we say loan officers are used to running a downhill race, because we got in the business, in 2010, you've only had an improving interest rate market where the outstanding rate was higher than your market rate. So it was just like taking candy from a baby for 15 years. So once it inverted, like it inverted very shortly in 2018, the end of 2018. But once it inverted, and by the way, when it inverted in 2018, mortgage companies started closing. I mean, there was people banging all over. I mean, it was just Armageddon for 2 quarters while we were completely inverted. And then now we've had 2 years of this, 3 years of this massive inversion of this, market rate, 3 points higher than the, outstanding rate. And so that's what we're just feeling. I think this is a great visual because it kind of just explains everything that's easy to see.
When was the big swing? Was it 2018, did you say?
2018 is where we were in the actual market rate went above the outstanding rate, and it only did it for 2 quarters, but it still devastated the marketplace.
Right. I forget what the reason was.
There were a few reasons. That's when they had the taper tantrum, under Bernanke, and they went to start to do some mild fiscal tightening, and the market just completely threw a tantrum, and then they had to go back to loosening.
Gotcha.
So what
Yeah,
happened in
that was
2018, David, Bernanke was okay. They had been accommodated since the great financial crisis. When they were still buying mortgage-backed securities hands over fist, they were, buying treasuries, they're putting a ton of liquidity. And Bernanke's like, hey, we gotta turn the spigot off someday because it's now been, 8 years. And so they started to tighten down on easing, not tightening, but they started tightening down. The market did not like it when they turned off that spigot, and it just threw a tantrum. And rates went up significantly in that short amount of time because the Fed quit being a buyer. And then we they very quickly reversed themselves. Even before the pandemic, they reversed themselves to try to get that number fixed. So now we're really kind of just all that stuff that you see that delta, let's say below the outstanding rate. Well, we're now paying the tax on that. We're just doing it severely.
Yeah, that was an interesting year for me. That was a year that I left the mortgage industry and moved to California and took 2.5 years and just went into it wasn't too far away, but real estate industry instead of mortgage. So that was an interesting year for me.
The rampant rumors back in Q2 2018 of how many companies were just brought to their knees. The one you worked
Yeah.
at was probably had the probably strongest rumors of having fiscal problems.
Yeah,
But
you
they
told
pierced.
me that a little while ago, and I'd never heard that before.
Yeah, and then rumors may not be true. I don't know, but it was a tough time. It was because we weren't used to it. We just weren't in shape for that kind of market. Just like we weren't in shape when it happened this time. But look how much more severe. I
Right.
mean, seriously, there was a bunch of companies went out of business 2018 with that little hiccup, and look at what we've had to face. I know that the difference is they didn't have as much as a war chest going into it, but this has been a pretty severe experience. I mean, that's a very big delta right there.
Who were some notable companies that went out of business?
Um, I'm trying to think, Dave. There were a few top 10 companies that went out of business, but it was much more fragmented business then. Like nobody had market
Yeah,
share. There's a million players, so
right,
it wasn't like countrywide.
right. But there were some top 10 players that went out of business?
In 2018 or merged. Nothing like the implodometer of the 2010s,
Right, right.
which was insane.
Alright, I think we had, 2 more slides. I'm getting
I
it
think one
wrong.
or maybe two. We have the best
1 or
slide
2.
going. Okay. Oh, yeah,
We
this
need
is
the
just
numbers
interesting.
in the
I figured
slide.
that in there 'cause it's interesting. And what this is this segment of the market is still pretty strong. So the luxury share of homes sold is growing. It actually is probably having the firmest price in the market, depending on geography. It's just kind of an interesting thing. Also, by the way, is dominated by a lot of all cash sales. 50%, as you were looking, we took this slide out, but 50% of houses over $2 million are paid for in cash. So this market's a little bit doesn't really care about interest rates, doesn't really care about inflation. It does care though about how the stock market's doing and how asset classes are doing.
What percent is over
Like
2,000,000?
50%. Over 2 million,
That's
50%
insane.
are cash, and over like 10 million, it's 60%.
Wow. Who are these people?
By the way, I said take that slide out. Nobody cares, and I'm talking about
Yeah, here we
it.
go. We got one more slide in this one.
And this is the best one. And by this is our last data slide, I think, this talk here. But this is Mike's, you know, good, bad, okay. And so the okay is 0.5% on home price increase. The high end is, we get something close to 3%, and the low end is they drop 2%, roughly, or 3%. And so that's the three different, things that could happen. That's his whole spectrum. He's probably right in picking the one that he did, 0.5%.
Yeah, what are the 3 things, the 3 arrows, at the end of the chart?
The top one is the high end of what his forecast is for where houses could go, and in his report, he talks about what has to happen for that to happen. And then the middle one is the Compass forecast, and that's what he believes at point 0.5. And then the low end is what some analysts think there are more doomsday, and he explains that in his report why each one can happen.
Gotcha, gotcha. Alright, well, that
Yeah, and
wraps
I
up
highly
the
recommend this
forecast.
report. 60 is free. You give them your email, and you get the 64 pages. It's great.
Yep. Well, I forecast that you're about to get excited about talking about Costco next.
Where else can you go for date night for $1.50?
Let's bring in Costco.
Let's talk Costco. Now, this is, guys. I don't know. Usually, we only try to talk about stuff that relates to what we do, and I don't know how this relates to what is do, but it's super interesting. So I don't know. I've always wondered if Costco was rated as a national pizza company, how would it be? How big would it be? Or if Costco was rated as a national gas station, how big would it be? Like, where would it rank? And we have some of those answers, and it's completely startling. Now, it's important to understand Costco only has 6,500 locations, right? And that might sound like a lot, but let's say like Domino's has 27,000 or something like that. So it's a really interesting comparison. So let's look at David. Let's look at some of these data points, and they're very surprising. All right, so we're talking about pizzas, right? And as you can see, Domino's is the top seller, but I think they're the top seller with 6,850 locations approximately, where Costco only has 600 food courts. That being said, Costco would be the 14th largest pizza company. But what caught our attention, I don't think we have this on our slide, is that in the on Halloween this last year, they sold 358,000 pizzas from 600 stores. That is a lot of pizzas from one store.
I didn't know buying pizza on Halloween was a thing or so popular.
And apparently it is. I
I
didn't
guess
either.
Halloween parties?
Yeah, and you don't want to cook. You got to get the kids out. 358,000 pizzas on at 9.95 or whatever they are. So that's kind of interesting. But let's look at the other stuff because all of it is shocking to me. And David, you can just all right.
I
So
was I was just kinda surprised that Domino's was number 1. I never knew that.
oh yeah, they're giant, dude. So
What's
this other thing,
what's your favorite?
Costco. I don't really go. I've never even really eaten at a Domino's.
Papa John's for me.
Yeah, I go local or Costco. I go local. You know what pizza I'm actually starting to like, David, is Whole Foods.
Really?
Yeah, they got a good pizza place.
Yeah, I think I've had that a few times, and I think I remember not really being impressed.
Oh, all right. I'll get you the wrong special. All right, David, were you surprised that they sell 137 million rotisserie chickens a year?
I mean, I if you asked me to guess how many rotisserie chickens, I would never even come close. I've no idea, but 137 million is insane.
They sell the most rotisserie chickens, as you can imagine, in the world. They don't sell the most prepared chicken because the fried chicken places have a ton more outlets. But there would be like number 3 or number 4. It's not insignificant. And I don't know if you know this, David. I think it was about 10 years ago. They brought the chicken processing in house so that they can maintain their price point of 4.99. So I think they now have
Hmm.
2 or 3 chicken processing centers around the United States, maybe 4 now, and they do it all their own. It's all in house now. It's crazy.
Do Americans eat more beef or more chicken in a year?
That's a good question, David. I don't know. Maybe you can Google that or
Yeah.
Perplexity.
Mecha
But so did
McKenna
they
can
sell
fact check.
375,000 rotisserie chickens a day.
How many is that by location? There were 6,000 locations?
I don't know how many sell. They said 600 food courts, but I don't know how many sell chicken. But isn't that just a bunch of crazy numbers?
That's nuts.
All right, let's keep
I
going
wonder
because
oh,
there's still.
yeah.
uh,
I wonder what it would be compared to, Sam's Club.
Yeah,
Also,
well, we
it did not give me an exact number, but Google says that Americans eat significantly more chicken than beef, mostly due to its price.
because
Interesting.
Americans eat about 40 pounds of beef a year, 49 pounds of beef. We just read that last week. Okay, let's go to more because Costco is the number one seller of organic produce in the world. They are the number one seller of wine in the world. That is for retailers, by the way. And let's keep going. There's more. Yeah, they are a top seller of olive oil and vanilla extract, and they are the number one seller of toilet paper. They are also, by the way, they are the number one seller of hot dogs in the world.
Jeez.
Oh, isn't that crazy?
I don't remember the last time I had a Costco or big box store hot dog. Are they any good?
The Wall Street Journal did a comparison of hot dogs, like from 8 different places, like Sam's Club, Costco, and Costco was definitely rated the highest.
Is it really?
Are they any good? I don't know. I like cheese in my hot dog, so you're gonna have to find out how to give me cheese.
Yeah.
And of course, they don't have the fresh onions anymore, so that's a bummer. You got to get them. McKenna, is
Yeah.
that the last one? We have one stat in here we didn't include. Oh yeah, let's keep going. Oh yeah, so that's another thing, super interesting, right? The average Costco sells somewhere between 27,000 and 33,000 gallons of gas a day.
Bucky's,
Bucky's is giant.
40,000.
Actually, Costco is a much bigger retailer of gasoline because they have more stations of Bucky's. But Bucky's has the highest average. And I was looking like, what does that compare to your local corner Chevron or Mobil? And they only sell 2 to 4,000, gallons a day. Is that crazy? Like Costco is selling 3 or 10 times the amount of gas that your local gas station is selling.
Why is that? I've never gone through a Costco gas station. Why?
They're immaculate. They're well lit. They're really well maintained. They always have new equipment, and they're 25 cents to 30 cents cheaper than the nearest gas station.
Oh, is it that much?
In Carlsbad, David, the gas on the right off the freeway off ramp might be 5.75, and Costco might be 4.75.
Whoa. Okay, I didn't realize it was that significant.
Yeah. Now, if you look at discounter gas, it's like not some right on the freeway. they're still going to be in some cities 50 cents cheaper than the lowest competitor.
Right. And it is only available for Costco members, correct?
That's right. You got to use your Costco card.
Yeah. I'm not very happy with Costco right now because I just found out that I can't get in with my wife's card. Can I
Yeah,
get around that?
yeah. But why don't you just get your own card?
I guess I should.
I
Yeah.
think you get
Can you get as
four. You
many?
get. I think you get multiple ones under a membership. It's not until you get over four or something like that.
Okay. Then David King Costco card is on the docket.
Yeah, get your card, dude. McKenna, you know what I didn't put in here? We didn't put pies. They're the number one seller of pies. In the
Is
three
it not
days
on
leading
there?
up to Thanksgiving, they sold 4.5 million pies.
Oh my gosh.
That's
And
7,000 pies per warehouse.
and what kind of pies? Just all of them? Whether it be
80% pumpkin pie.
pecan, pumpkin,
It's like 80%
80%
pumpkin
pumpkin
pie. And they
pie.
sell apple, pumpkin, pecan. But so 7,000 per location. Remember, that's in 3 days. That means your little local Costco sold over 2,000 pies a day.
That's just crazy.
The average one. Can you imagine stacking 2,000 pies? Much less
How many
cooking
how,
them.
how many employees does an average Costco to make it run?
Well, the average Costco, a fair-sized Costco on average does $1 million a day in business.
Wow.
Across their entire
That's crazy.
system, the average Costco does almost $270 million a year.
Hmm, that's crazy.
Isn't it crazy? Yeah, it's really crazy. The Costco, uh, the Costco here, I think the Costco here in Scottsdale is the number one alcohol store in the country.
Is it really?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I guess I mean, I don't go there very often, so it's out of sight, out of mind for me. I rarely go there other than when I bought that case of banquet beer for McKenna 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago that she just finished.
But you have a new one, so you'll be there frequently.
Yeah, as long as I get
You
my
can't
card.
beat buying a chicken for $4.99, dude. There's just no way to beat
Yep.
it.
No, Kelly, I think Kelly's going usually about once a week or so now. It was like just once a
See?
month, but now she's there about once a week.
And by the way, a pumpkin pie for and it's a giant pie for $5.99. Come on.
Right. Yeah. Do you get a lot of your meat from there? I think you do.
I don't. I used to get a lot of my
You
meat
don't?
from there, and they are, as you know, the number one provider of choice and prime beef in America, by far. Um,
Yeah.
but I don't. And by the way, the other thing is their butchers are very accommodating. Like you can get them to cut whatever. I mean, they're great. They're so good. You can get almost anything there. You can get your meat cut any way you can. But what happened is that I'll go more to somebody that sells a loss leader, and Costco doesn't do meat as a loss leader.
What kind of place does meat as a loss leader?
A high end grocery store.
Okay.
Like say the grocery stores by my house in Carlsbad, they might sell meat under price to get you in to buy the rest of the stuff, right?
Right.
Not
Right.
so much now with the shortage in meat. And then Costco doesn't have sales, but I still go to. I mean, Costco sometimes will get backed up with too much Prime, and they'll put it on sale so you can get good deals. So I always pay attention,
Mhm.
and they have some cuts of meat that most other stores don't carry, including the
Gotcha.
ribeye cap.
Right. But the you said the grocery stores, it's typically only the high-end grocery stores?
Yeah, if you for well, I try to get not better meat, so I'd have to go someplace that carries it. But yeah, but like think like for Thanksgiving or for Christmas, you probably have local grocery stores advertising, standing rib roast for $7.99 or $5.99. That same roast is going to be $13.99 at Costco because they're not going to discount it.
Gotcha. Alrighty, I think we've beat Costco over the head enough. You wanna get to our last segment?
Yeah, let's do it because we're going to go a little far afield in this last segment, everybody. So hang on there.
Alright, let's run that bumper.
Well, this
Alright,
is no.
so
So sorry.
yeah,
Um,
lead the way, wrong.
We
wrong.
can we get a slide? Thank you. Now, I don't know if you guys know Peter Diamandis. He's a huge futurist. He's behind all sorts of initiatives like the X Prize. His newsletter, which is kind of not trippy, but deep. I think it's every Sunday or every Monday. It's free, so if you want to see what's going on as a futurist, subscribe to his newsletter. But he's been discussing lately what happens when we live in a world where we don't have to work, where computers or machines can do everything better than we can. What becomes our purpose? What becomes our value and what becomes our contribution? And so in this newsletter, he started talking about there's going to be a shift between money and compute. And money really is just a unit of consumption. It allows you to buy what already exists. But compute is a unit of agency where it allows you to create what doesn't exist. Right. And so that's what humans will do in the future. They're not going to consume things for money. Instead, they're compute to create. It's going to be a huge transition. And we're going to go from an input economy where we're paid for our hours worked to an outcome economy where you're rewarded for the value you create. And in the letter, he talks about what kind of future value there'll be. And it's interesting if you want to know where you skate to where the puck is going. Is do what AI can't do what a robot can't do, and there's clearly things that they can't do. And he's encouraged you to skate there, but he also wants to really in this article he goes deeply, and you have to start really believing in abundance and not scarcity because we're going to come into a world where everything is going to be abundantly almost free. I mean, when machines can make everything, there's no labor cost, there's unbelievable productivity, everything will be near free, and we'll have this radical abundance. And how are we going to embrace abundance? And so it's a kind of an interesting concept. We added this, David, because it's here we are at the new year, and you're looking at resolutions and you're trying to figure out your mindset. I thought it was a good kind of peek into one person's thought of the future.
Yeah, I've heard this from several people. What do you think the chances are of that becoming a reality?
Well, I think it's going to become a reality. I don't know if it's
You
going to
do?
become a reality. He thinks in the next 5 to 8 years. I don't know if
Right.
that's going to happen, but we're definitely going to get where. I mean, we've already seen it, David. Right? I mean, machines mostly harvest food today, not humans. Machines now are actually slaughtering cows, not human. Like the machines are already taking over functions that we don't really love, and they're going to just keep getting better and better at it. And the thing is, once a machine can do what we used to do for work, we have to find a new value, right? Like what are we? And that's the thing, and that's kind of a good thing. Like we should all be doing right now. Like other than my ability to go dig a trench, what is my value, and what could it be if it had to be just purely something that has to emanate from only I can do, which I think is great.
Yeah. Um, I just I I think it'll happen. I think it's more like a for it to ultimately be something where you no longer have to work. I think that's more like a 15 to 20 year nah, maybe not, maybe not.
It
Um,
may be longer. I don't know what the timeline is. I don't think it's going to come as fast as they say, but you can see it, right? You can see it in the future that things are going to change. Like look for example, we'll see in the next decade that we won't have truck drivers, we won't have taxi drivers. Those will all be automated machines. They can do it today. It's just getting through some politics and some difficulties. Like that's going to be a big shift, right? And we're going to continue to see shifts like this. We're even to the point, David, where we're going to see how we travel. You're going to have essentially personal flying taxis. They're already testing them in cities today, right? Just like they have drone delivery. It's just going to be different. What happens if you don't have to worry about traffic jams? Like you just order your little personal helicopter thing and hovercraft, and it just takes you where you need to go. It's just
right.
going to be all different.
I saw just the other day where I think in a handful of states where they outlawed the production of lab grown meat. Did you see that?
I have seen that. They did it in Texas, right?
I don't. It was a few states, I think, maybe 4 or 5. I don't know, but yeah, lab grown meat was outlawed in a handful of states. But I wonder if that's kind of where, you mentioned, machines are going to slaughter the cows and whatever. I wonder how much that is baked into it, where we grow our own fake meat. You know,
Yeah, I didn't read the article. I saw a headline yesterday. They were highlighting a farm that feeds their, I don't remember what kind of animal it was, but feeds it just from lab grown meat, and they said it was a healthier animal. I'm like, ooh.
they wait, they feed the animal the lab grown meat.
Yeah,
What kind of animal was
I
eating
didn't
meat?
read
Cows
that.
don't
I just
eat
saw the
meat.
headline. I was like, I don't care.
Gotcha.
I'm not reading this. I got other stuff.
Right.
It's one thing,
Alrighty.
David,
Well,
to wrap up, on this whole New Year's theme, it's definitely an exciting new world, where anything and everything can happen, and we just got to figure out where we fit in and how we contribute and what our basic value is as a human being, and that should, hopefully that's exciting. Hopefully we find that exciting, not scary.
yeah. We're venturing into the unknown, Mr. Stowers.
Yes, we are indeed.
Yeah. Who knows where we'll be in 5 years, 10 years.
Exactly. McKenna, any
All
closing
right.
thoughts here on our New Year's Day? You didn't really jump on too much today. I'm not even certain you were listening.
Not much from me other than the fact that lab grown meat sounds disgusting. And I want
Absolutely.
no part in that.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I'm in the same boat as you on that.
Alrighty. Well, if you've joined us, we appreciate you watching. Ron and I will be back to our regular schedule next week, Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern. And I'm sure we'll have some new fun topics for 2026. And Ron, any last words? Oh, we didn't cheers.
No. Cheers, David. Thank you. It's been a great year. I look forward to what's coming up next year. Plenty of changes.
Yep. All right. Thanks for joining us. See you next week.
Thank you, everybody.